Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaRevelis and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link down in the description to the page, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. My name is Joshua Revelis. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down with fellow enthusiasts to talk about what's going on in the technology, business, and gaming world. I hope you guys enjoy. Alright everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Revelis. I am your host as usual. And today's episode 38 of the show. Yeah, I know. Obviously, based on the poll, this is going to be an interesting episode, especially because, like I mentioned before, this is going to be over me building my first PC. And I think I want to clarify a little bit on what exactly I'm going to be talking about, because, you know, it's kind of interesting talking about my first PC and everything, you know, like, oh, Josh is just going to brag about what he put inside of it and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit of what I put inside of it, but I think there's also an important thing to learn about the experience because, oh boy, if I'm being honest with you guys, it's probably one of the most frustrating things I've done in a while. Like, it was incredibly frustrating. It took a lot longer than I expected to do it. Obviously, I think the whole building process was fair. We took about like 6 hours, but I think it's some of the troubleshooting with Windows and things like that just was incredibly frustrating, but we'll talk more about it. So, like I mentioned, today's episode is going to be over my experience building my first PC. So, to give a little bit of context of the story, originally, when I had my gaming rig and everything, it was mainly because of my HP Omen-15 laptop. I had bought the laptop for CAD designing for school. I really liked the machine. I think for my first experience owning a high-end laptop, even though I did end up buying the laptop for CAD designing, I wasn't in the College of Engineering yet, and obviously they recommended that we had a laptop with those kind of specs, or at least like a desktop if you had a desktop. I really liked the machine. It was able to handle everything I can throw at it easily. Obviously, I had a HN i7. I had my 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM in there, 2666 speeds. I had a full GTX 1060 inside of it. Obviously, a terabyte hard drive, 256 gigabyte SSD. It was a really good machine. I really liked it. It had a lot of the ports, very modern. Had a full SD card slot. But as time went by, I started to realize that it was just unconventional to lug the thing around. Personally, it was. It was a pain in the butt to take through the airport. It was a pain in the butt to take to class because it was like 5 pounds. And as time went by, I was like, I can't keep doing this. And as a result, I eventually got the iPad Pro, like my 10.5 inch, so you guys already know. I got that, and I started using that in class instead. And it worked out a lot better for me. And because of that, I was able to leave the laptop in the room, do the big stuff on there, and then take the iPad whenever I needed to be mobile. And I ended up enjoying the iPad a lot more. So, how does that relate to this entire story of building a PC? Well, it actually sets the groundwork because it lays the foundation of my reasoning behind why I sold the laptop and built a PC. Since I already had a replacement for my laptop in the form of my iPad, which I even upgraded my iPad to 11 inch 2018 iPad Pro. So I had more power under the hood, a little bit bigger display, but same form factor, better Apple Pencil, and then obviously USB Type-C. I made the decision that I think it was time to sell the laptop and build a desktop that can stay in the room and do all the CAD designing, do all this stuff, and effectively be better, especially with the thermal performance. Because one thing that people need to keep in mind when you buy laptops is thermals on gaming laptops tend to be really wonky and tend to be pretty bad depending on the laptop. Like, as much as I love the Omen, and as much as like I know a lot of people like them, we have to be honest with ourselves that the thermal is really bad on that thing. It will get hot, clearly. I'm not going to stand here and tell you guys, yeah, it totally doesn't get hot, totally not, but it will. And that's something we have to be mindful of, is that it will be hot. And because of that, even with my new thermal pad and everything and all this other stuff, we changed the thermal phase, it still was unmanageable and it was hot to the touch. Like, it was being very uncomfortable to touch. So I decided, well, I think it's time to build a PC. We have a monitor that's 144 hertz, my Acer monitor. I can't really say the name, but it's like $200. 144 hertz, 1 millisecond response time, 1080p. And we already had that and I couldn't use it. But with DVI, I could actually use the full 144 hertz and everything. And this leads into the whole thing of what we ended up doing. So, on the day we actually built the whole PC, what we ended up doing was I sold the laptop for $900. There was a guy who was interested in buying for me. It was a really nice guy. I felt happy that I sold it to him. He was a really cool guy. Served in the military for 5 years, had back problems and everything. So a lot of respect for him. He was very kind. He was very patient with us. He obviously didn't lowball me because I asked for $900 and he gave me $900 up front. So he paid basically $900 bills. And because of that, we were able to go get the graphics card, because this is something I'm going to make sure that you guys understand when it comes to building a PC. The graphics card, or really more specifically, anything you can get from somebody else, I would recommend doing that, because when you buy everything from the store, there's nothing wrong with that, clearly. But you also have to keep in mind the tax. So whatever your budget is, realistically, whatever your budget is, say you want to spend $1,000, you have to be mindful that that has to include tax as well. So what we ended up doing was I went on OfferUp before we even did all this thing, before I met up the guy. I went on OfferUp and I was looking for graphics cards. So I was like, okay, 1660 Ti is $299 plus tax at Micro Center. So we can pick it up pretty easily. And my friend told me, why don't you try to find a better card, but for cheaper? And what I ended up finding was I found a guy that was pretty much selling a brand new 1070 for $220. And clearly that was way cheaper because I'm not paying tax and I'm saving over $70 plus dollars. Actually, yeah, over $70 to $80 plus dollars. And it worked. It was pretty much a brand new card. It had nothing wrong with it. The guy only used it for like a month. He only used it for streaming, and that was pretty much it. And the card runs great. Obviously, it's a better card than a 1060 or 1660 Ti, clearly. Has more VRAM, has better RAM inside of it, clearly. And it was just a better card, so I was glad. Obviously, it sticks out like a sore thumb because it's the Asus White Tiger one, so as we get into the build, you'll understand why it sticks out. But so we got the card first, and then we went straight to Micro Center. Went to Micro Center, and we picked out my parts. So for the CPU, I ended up getting a Ryzen 5 2600X. I got a Gigabyte B450 Aurora Pro Wi-Fi Rev 1. I got that. My RAM was G.Skill Trident ZRGB 16 gigabytes, 2.6 of 8, DDR4 3200 speed memory. For my storage capacity, I ended up getting the Seagate Barracuda 2 terabyte, 7,200 RPM internal hard drive, and an Inland 480 gigabyte SSD. My case was a very popular one that actually I really wanted the most. I ended up getting the NZ XT H500i mid-tower case, and all in black, clearly. And my power supply was an EVGA Supernova G3 550 watt 80 plus gold certified fully modular ATX power supply. So what does all that translate to? I basically built a high-end PC. I know some people are going to tell me, well, Josh, your CPU isn't that high-end, but it's a 6-core processor. Yeah, I'm just going to give you the specs. It was a 6-core processor. Its core clock is 3.6 gigahertz, boost up to 4.2, TDP of 95 watt. It was 2nd gen Ryzen. It's really good too. It's not bad. It actually is a nice CPU. Obviously, I eventually want to upgrade to the Ryzen 7 2700X eventually for the 8-core processors. I really do want that. But the 2600X, perfect. Obviously, the stock cooler on those things are actually pretty good on AMDs, which is funny. But they're really good. And obviously, everything else was high end. I made sure my graphics card is a really great card as well. You know, my tower is a really popular one. It's the H500i. It comes with 2 fans inside. It's a medium-sized one, so it's very compact, so it's able to move around fairly easily. It's not like a super large tower, so it's a medium-sized tower. Obviously, in terms of RAM, I made sure I got a good RAM, clearly. I might end up buying another stick pretty soon, maybe. But that's also something I wanted to bring up was the whole build process, because this is where it gets a little bit more annoying. So, clearly, when you're building a PC, you can watch videos about it. We didn't really watch a video. When we were building it together, and I'm going to give a shout out to Thomas and Gene for helping me out, because it took a while. It took us like about 6+ hours to put it all together, because obviously we had to get the case, we had to find the screws, we had to get everything first. So essentially when we were building it, the first thing we had to put on, which also Cameron, I'm going to give a shout out to Cameron, because Cameron had the same build essentially. So Cameron was instructing us the way we were supposed to do it was to put everything on the motherboard first before we put the motherboard in the case, because obviously that's a very important thing. The motherboard has to go in the case first before anything else. So we put everything on the motherboard. We lined up the CPU. It just pops in place. Put the cooler on top, because the cooler has a thermal paste already on it, so you just plop it on, screw it on. We put the RAM in place, and once that was done, then we put it into the case, and then from there we started going step by step. We started putting in like different parts first, so we ended up, I believe after that, we ended up putting in I think I would say the power supply, if I'm correct. I think that's what we ended up doing. Yeah, it was the power supply. We had to end up moving around a fan, because since I didn't actually buy extra fans right off the bat, we had to move one of the fans that came in the case. So we ended up doing that. We had to move it so that we can have an intake and an outtake, because obviously you have to keep it cool. So we did that, and then we put the power supply in, and then from there we started hooking up all the, obviously we had to rewire the fans. We plugged in the power supply. We started connecting like the SSD, the hard drive, everything into the power supply, connecting the board. And from there, I think it was pretty smooth sailing essentially, because you take off the back panel and then everything plops in there. And it was pretty straightforward. I think the main trouble, I think the last thing we ended up doing was the power supply, or not the power supply, was the graphics card. And then from there, we just managed all the wires and everything, which one thing I do like about this case specifically is that it has something we call a dungeon inside of it. So you can basically just push everything in there, because it has a lot of room. It actually looks nice. So it's actually pretty nice. So we finished that. We finished building, and, you know, we had to check, okay, does this thing turn on? And we did. It actually turned on. We wired everything up. So we plugged in where the HD audio goes. We plugged in, like, connecting the buttons and everything. Make sure the USB A ports and the USB-C port works. Ethernet, we made sure all that works. And from there, it was going with the Windows. And this is something that I'm going to tell you guys now is probably the most infuriating thing that happened, because I think from there, what we ended up doing before we even tried Windows, we went to Fry's to see if we need to go get a Windows key, and then we realized that we didn't need a Windows key. We just needed a flash drive, and to go get the Windows 10 media creation tool to put Windows on there, and etc. And because you can put Windows for free on a computer, you can. And I think this is something people tend to forget, is that you can get Windows for free technically. It's actually Windows, real Windows, like it's not fake. It's from Microsoft itself. But the only downside is that you can't change your background. You can't change the theme of the desktop, and you'll have a watermark on the bottom right screen. But that watermark is translucent, so you won't even see it. And sometimes it won't even show up. So essentially you're basically paying $100 to get rid of the watermark and then change your settings, or not settings, your background. And that's it. So Personally, I wouldn't buy the Windows key unless if you really, really need it, then buy it. But I personally wouldn't, so we didn't. So we got the flash drive. We went on Thomas's computer, downloaded the Windows thing, and from there you had to go into the BIOS, and then you had to set it up so that the boot option number one was the flash drive with Windows, and then the second was the SSD, because you have to put Windows on the SSD so that it runs smooth. And we went through the whole process. Like, obviously, once it boots up, Windows and everything, you click in the BIOS, like boot up from SSD or boot up from flash drive, loads up the installation Windows thing. And this is where we came into like a whole crapshoot that pissed me off, was putting the whole process, because we essentially got stuck in an infinite loop of trying to install Windows. We thought, what happened is the first time it went through smooth. We thought, okay, we went through, it's about to restart and boot up Windows, and then it went back to the installation screen, and it kept doing that over and over, and we had to constantly keep, flashing the SSD because that had nothing on there. So we had to keep removing the stuff on there, and then I had to call Sergio, and we thought we had to set the drives and everything. Like, it was an entire mess, and we gave up like at 2 a.m. We basically gave up, and obviously my parents didn't know where I was, because obviously Thomas's house, for some reason, in my phone doesn't actually get service in Thomas's house, so I was pretty much in the dark. But I was so focused on getting this fixed. Like, I was getting frustrated, I was getting annoyed. So we gave up at 2 a.m. And I woke up like on the next day, like around 10 a.m, and I decided to, try to see if anything had changed in anything. And, we were stuck in the same loop. So I ended up calling my brother, and my brother was like, hey, wait a minute. When you were booting up Windows, did you take out the flash drive once it restarted? And I was like, no. And I did the normal thing, refreshed everything so that make sure it's a clean install on the SSD. And then when it did the restart, it took out the flash drive, and then it actually worked. So essentially, a lot of the videos, they always leave out this step. When you watch how to boot it up from the SSD specifically, they leave out the step that you have to take out the flash drive. They always leave that out. Like, they never say it. Like, it's really dumb, but it's also a big thing that will piss everybody off. But it should also be common sense. Like, hey, you're trying to boot it from the SSD now, you can take out the flash drive. I get why they won't mention it, but I understand, I think it's also reasonable that you should tell people you should take out the flash drive at this point. And that's what got us stuck in this whole infinite loop of rage and everything, because I was pissed. Like, I'm telling you, I was furious. But we did all that, and from there, set up Windows like normal. Got all my stuff back because I backed up everything on my Google Drive. So I had set everything up. I went to download it. Well, first I had to put my antivirus on there, because I'm going to tell you guys this now. When you set up a new computer, always make sure before you start downloading anything, your antivirus is up and it's working. Make sure you do that, because you can easily catch a virus and screw over your entire rig from the get-go if you don't do that. So my advice, make sure you have the antivirus. Like, that's what I did. I had to go through my email, find the activation key and all that stuff, and obviously transfers, because I own it. So make sure. I would recommend, my advice for antiviruses, I really like ESET, or ESET. ESET. So I really like that. It's very minimal. It runs really well. It does clean system checks. It's really efficient. I really like it. It doesn't take up a lot of resources. Really nice. One thing I will also, another one that's really popular is Malwarebytes too. I know that's another very popular one. It's free, but it's also very popular, and a lot of people would recommend that you just pay for the premium version, because it's actually nice. I know my friend Reaper, or Darius specifically, he uses Malwarebytes and Active System Care 11 together. He uses those two in combination with each other. One, because Active System Care helps clean out junk from the computer, and then Malwarebytes helps to, protect your computer essentially. And they're both really nice combination, free options, really nice for people that don't want to spend money. But that's something I would also recommend too, is that make sure you get a good antivirus. I like McAfee, but at the same time, McAfee takes up so much resources, because a lot of computers give it to you for free, like pre-built ones. So I would recommend that you shouldn't use it. It's very resource hungry. It uses up a lot of resources, so I wouldn't use it. Norton's not really that good either. Because it takes up a lot of resources. Unless if you're using the business one, then yeah, the business one's incredible based on what I've heard, based on what Sergio told me. Because it doesn't. Like, there's a difference between consumer and the business one when it comes to antivirus, because the business one makes sure that it doesn't use up any resources. It's clean, efficient, and it does incredible, thorough checks. But that's something to be mindful of, is your antivirus is very important. So how does the rig run for me so far? So, after, I think it was on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday is when I went to go buy the fans and everything, the new fans. I bought 2 Corsair fans that were 4-pin, so they work. They obviously, I can control the speeds and everything on the setting on the settings inside of the case, because the case comes with a little software that allows you to control the fans, the RGB and stuff like that. So I was able to do that. I installed 2 new Corsair fans that are a lot faster than the stock fans. They're a lot better. They ramp up to a higher speed, so like instead of 500 to 1500, which are the stock fans, which are really nice and quiet. The Corsair ones go to 500. I think it's 800 to 2500, so it's a lot better. So it's able to ramp up the speeds a lot more and keep it a little bit more cool. So I put those as intake, and I set the other ones as outtake. And yeah, well, actually, no. The intake is the 2 stock fans, and the outtake is the Corsair, because they're able to push those and blow cold air on the CPU and help keep dust out and everything. So far with the rig, it's really great. It's able to run all my games at ultra settings very, very easily at 144 hertz. Rainbow runs incredibly good. It looks buttery smooth. Obviously, other games like Smite and everything have run incredibly well as well. Paladins runs good. I haven't tried Left 4 Dead. I want to see how that runs, but a lot of the games I play run really good, and I can stream very easily. But I really do like it. I think in terms of the whole process and everything, yeah, I understand it's very frustrating for the first time. Like, it happens to everybody. It's very frustrating, and you can easily get discouraged. Trust me. I was, being honest with you guys, I got really discouraged right off the bat. It's when the whole Windows thing started happening is when I started getting really discouraged. And I would recommend that you guys don't get discouraged. Like, I know it's easier said than done, but it's definitely a lot better if you think about it. Like, yes, I get it. If you have to make sure you have the proper cooling and everything in your computer, because that's very important, is cooling. Obviously, some people will say liquid cooling, you should put it inside of there. Obviously, I'm a strong person against it, because liquid cooling, as good as it is at keeping your computer cool, it can also mess up your parts a lot easier. That's a downside that a lot of people seem to always keep forgetting to mention, is that liquid cooling can easily rust your CPU and can rust your graphics card. So if you ever wanted to sell them, nobody's going to buy them off you guys, so you're pretty much out of luck there. But I think overall it's better. Do I miss my laptop to a degree? Yes. Obviously having Windows 10 on there by itself. Obviously not having the SD card slot kind of sucks, because since with my Zoom recorder uses an SD card, I can't just plug it in and go. Like, I would have to do extra steps, but luckily for me, I was already prepared, and I had stuff on the side that was already able to handle all that stuff, which is my RAV Power File Hub Plus that I bought for my old iPad, to able to move files from my say my SSD or hard drive or even SD card to my iPad. I was able to do it, and this thing actually works great, because I can move the files from the SD card to the iPad, and the iPad I can upload them straight into my Google Drive, and from there I just download and go. So it's really effective, very handy, to be honest. But you get my point, is that it's really good. I like it. It takes a little bit more, but I still think it's a fair trade-off. Obviously, being able to game and use my monitor to its full potential and everything is really nice. Obviously, one thing I will get is another monitor. Probably that and a better keyboard. I know I need a better keyboard, because Thomas gave me a $15 keyboard that's all right, but $15, you get what you paid for. I already had my mouse already and my trackpad, my G502 Hero. I love that thing. It's a really great mouse, to be honest. It has good button layout and everything. But My advice when it comes to building a PC would be to make sure you plan everything out. And that's something that I think is pretty straightforward, but I think it's also very important that you guys plan everything out. Like, if you're going to build it, like, know what you're building. I would recommend using PC Part Picker as a really good tool because you're able to make the build there, and it basically tells you, is there any compatibility issues? Is there anything that needs to be, I would say, that you need to be mindful of? It's very handy. It helps show you the lowest prices for parts. And depending on the place too, you go, like, say if you live in Texas and you have a Micro Center and Fry's, they price match with Amazon and Best Buy too. So they price match with Amazon a lot. So if Amazon has the cheapest price or Newegg, you can, price match and they'll give it to you for a lower price and everything. And sometimes even some of the parts on PC Part Picker, like, it says that it found the lowest price, but even places like Micro Center and stuff like that might actually have it cheaper. Like the Barracuda, they had it for $54 at Micro Center for a special sale they're doing, and instead of $59, I paid $54. The Inland SSD was actually cheaper as well. My motherboard and CPU were cheaper because of a special deal going on that they had where I would save $10 on the CPU or $20 on the CPU and then $10 on the motherboard, and then the RAM was, obviously cheapest because Newegg seems to beat out everybody in terms of RAM. Overall, it was handy, and then also the graphics card. I would make sure that if you see people in your area using like OfferUp or Facebook Seller, like the Facebook Marketplace specifically, I would look at that, look at pictures, ask them to provide details, like ask them to show pictures of the under part of the card where like the circuits and everything are, so you can get a good look at it and see if there's any burn in or anything, because if you see any burn marks or any damage on there, don't go for it, because that means that people have been using it for mining. But you end up running into a lot of people that sell like cards for very cheap, and it's mainly because it's people just upgrading. And obviously I wouldn't recommend you buy a build off somebody off there unless it's like there's a specific part that they're selling, like it's in the build but they're selling the build with that part and it's for a good price too. I would strongly recommend you go for it and just get the rest and sell, like get the part you want and then sell the rest of the stuff off, make your money back. But that's my advice when it comes to that. But the whole Windows thing too, it's very straightforward. Just remind yourself in the process that when you do the whole installation of Windows, right at the last part, take out the flash drive, take it out, and it's going to work. Because if not, you're going to be stuck in this infinite loop cycle that pissed me off to I don't even know how many ends. But I think overall, I really enjoyed the experience. It's very useful. Obviously, it's a very fun time because when you boot up your first built PC, it feels great. Because now you can have full control of your computer. Essentially, you have full control of what you can do with it, and when you want to upgrade and everything, like you have full control over that. Obviously, yes, that leads to some, I'd say, maturing on the person's part, that you have to learn how to manage your stuff. You have to be mindful to clean your stuff out. Obviously, you should always keep your stuff clean no matter what, especially with computers. Like, they're going to build up dust because there's fans moving, so make sure you clean them out. Thermal paste, I would always have an extra tube of thermal paste lying around. Two I would recommend very easily would be the Arctic Silver and the Corsair ones. Those are easily the two I can recommend the most. They're very popular and I know they work well, so I would recommend that. But I think overall it's a great experience. So to recap, I think the easiest way to recap was, don't get so discouraged when things aren't going well. Just be mindful that, hey, you're still learning. This is a first time experience. Make sure you have help doing it. If you have a friend that's built PCs before, I would recommend that you have them help you out, but in the sense that they also allow you to do most of it by yourself and show you how to do it as well. Like, essentially guiding you and encouraging you to learn for yourself, essentially. It's a learning experience is what it is. But also at the same time, like, explore the parts, explore your possibilities on what you can build, because you'd be surprised on how much cheaper it is to build your own PC than it is to buy a pre-built. To be honest, it's a lot better. Obviously, the whole Windows thing and everything, yes, but like I already mentioned, you can get Windows for free. So, and if you ever wanted to upgrade to one of them, to the actual Windows, you can do that whenever you want. It's whenever you have the money. I was starting off, I would not do it. I would save that money and invest it in something else, like say a better keyboard or a better mouse, or because if you're building it for the very first time, you never had a monitor, you never had a laptop, you never had a keyboard, you never had a mouse, you never have a monitor. Yes, you're going to spend a lot more money, clearly, because you have to get a better monitor. Well, you have to get a monitor to begin with. You have to get a mouse, a good mouse. You have to get a good keyboard. And then you have to build your rig, essentially. So any area you were able to save money, I would make sure that, or any area you can avoid paying taxes is where I would do it. Like, obviously, you can find mouses and keyboards off people that sell them for very cheap. There's people that sell like a mouse you're looking for, or a keyboard that you really want. You can find it for cheap, really. Like, to be honest, like most of the people that sell them, they just don't use them anymore. They just bought it, and then somebody probably gifted them a new one, or they bought another one, and they're just selling it, so they took care of it. The graphics card, like I said, be mindful of that stuff. You have to look at the card itself and address what's going to be inside of it. So I would be mindful of that. But I think overall, yeah, I think for anybody interested in building a PC, I would personally do it. I think it's a good call. It's very fun. It's very infuriating at times, but it's very fun, and I love my new PC. I'm still debating what to call it. I'll probably put a poll on Instagram and ask you guys, what do you want me to call this thing, really? I have like 3 names in mind, so we're going to see what we're going to call it. But I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I know you guys voted for this one the most out of all of them. You really wanted this one. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope this was helpful and encouraging to some people that are interested in building a PC and everything. I hope it's encouraging. Like, my advice for college students would be, you don't need a gaming laptop for college. Like, obviously, yes, I get it. Like, colleges of engineering and stuff like that, they'll try to tell you, yes, you need to have the laptop because you're going to do everything in class, when in reality, that's just a load of bull. I only bought it just because I thought, like, I basically bought the bait, and then I was all like, well, you know, it makes sense. And then you're like, okay, I can't keep carrying this thing around, so... Because you have to keep in mind, you also have access to the computer labs there, which are a lot beefier. Obviously, you can build your own, too. So, obviously, the new computer is going to be in the room most of the time. Obviously, my iPad is what I'm going to take to class to do notes and everything. So, I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you guys so much for coming back and listening to the episode. I really enjoy you guys coming back and listening to this stuff, really. You're basically just hearing me talk, basically. But it's also, I think it's also... based on what I've heard, some people said it's been really insightful. It's been giving them new context and I'd say new insight on topics, essentially, like different ways to think about it, and, you know, even question your own way of thinking, because I think it's very important that we shouldn't create our own echo chambers. Like, I make sure that I don't do that, because, you know, I don't want to be stuck in an echo chamber, because that doesn't help me grow as a person. Like, being stuck in an echo chamber and just hearing people like reaffirm your opinion is not a good thing. Because maybe your opinion is wrong, and, you know, you just have people encouraging a wrong opinion. So I would make sure you be mindful of that stuff, guys. Take in different opinions, take in different viewpoints, assess them, and, you know, come to your conclusion with that. I hope this was helpful to anybody considering building a PC. Obviously, if you know me in real life, I don't mind helping you guys, because, you know, I learned from my experience. You know, I learned the hard way, but I'm glad I did it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for your time. We're closing in on 300 downloads of the show, so I thank you guys so much for that. Let's keep going, and obviously we are still preparing everything for the 50th episode special. So I hope you guys come back, and thank you guys for your time. I love you guys to death. Bye, guys.